The evening air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and fading embers as Eleanor Morland approached the weathered doorstep of Agnes Crowley's home. The house itself seemed swallowed by the dense fog that curled and twisted along Hollow Street like a restless beast, its windows dim with the glow of oil lamps struggling against the encroaching night. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, the familiar weight of her journal in her coat pocket grounding her trembling resolve. She had come seeking answers, and though the chill of the air seeped through her layers, a fiercer chill gnawed at her thoughts, a mixture of dread and desperate hope. Agnes greeted her at the door, her sharp eyes glinting beneath silver lashes, a knowing smile touching her cracked lips. "Come in, Eleanor," she urged, her voice thin but steady. "The night grows thick, and with it, the shadows deepen." Inside, the parlor was a sanctuary of secrets. Shelves bowed under the weight of ancient tomes, their spines cracked and yellowed, while trinket strange talismans and dried herbs hung from ceiling beams and cluttered tables. The flicker of a single lantern cast long, quivering shadows, dancing like restless spirits across the room. Agnes motioned toward a faded rug beneath a small writing desk, where a loose floorboard peeked from beneath its faded edge, with a creak that seemed louder than the silence warranted. Agnes pried the board aside, revealing a shallow compartment lined with dust and cobwebs. Inside lay brittle manuscripts, their ink faded to a ghostly sepia, alongside yellowed sketches of Hollow Street as it might have looked centuries before the street lanterns freshly installed, their light eerily vibrant even in the drawings. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she unfolded one of the papers. The script was ornate, the language archaic, but the message was clear. A ritual had been performed here long ago, a desperate attempt to imprison a malevolent force now known as the Lantern Wraith. The ritual, however, had failed, binding the entity not just to the lantern's light, but to the street itself, ensnaring all who dwelled there in an endless night. As Eleanor absorbed this revelation, a sudden chill swept through the room. The lantern's flame flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows along the walls. Outside, the fog thickened, pressing against the window panes, like spectral fingers reaching for warmth. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat as vague shapes appeared and vanished within the mist phantoms. Perhaps, or the lost souls trapped by the curse. Later that evening, back in her modest home, Eleanor found herself confronted by Samuel Hargrove, the local reporter whose youthful skepticism had begun to waver in the face of mounting strange occurrences. He paced the small sitting room, notebook in hand, his sharp eyes fixed intently on Eleanor. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that this curse, it's tied to some ancient magic, and that the lanterns themselves are the prison?" Eleanor nodded, her voice steady despite the turmoil roiling within her. "Yes, and until that prison is broken, the fog will not lift, and the disappearances will continue." Samuel scribbled notes rapidly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning acceptance. "This changes everything. The police, the town, they're all ignoring what's really happening. But if this is true, then we're all trapped in this nightmare." The conversation lingered between them, a fragile bridge between doubt and conviction. As Samuel left, Eleanor's thoughts returned to Agnes's archives, the failed ritual, the binding of the Lantern Wraith, and the price paid by those who had tried to break free. Days later, Eleanor returned to Agnes's home, where the older woman sat by the fireplace, the flickering flames illuminating the deep lines etched by years of sorrow and secrecy across her face. "My family," Agnes began, her voice a soft tremble, "once sought to end this curse. They believed knowledge and will could undo what was done. But the ritual was flawed, born of desperation and ignorance. She produced a worn journal, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and heart-wrenching accounts of loss and failure. The lantern wraith is no mere ghost. It is a guardian and jailer, bound by the light it haunts. To break the curse, one must confront both the darkness and the light it controls. Eleanor listened, the weight of the revelation settling like a stone in her chest. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but clarity had finally pierced the fog of uncertainty. As the night deepened, Hollow Street lay shrouded in its relentless mist, the lanterns casting their cursed glow over the empty streets. The phantoms drifted closer, their silent lament a mournful echo of lives lost and secrets buried. Eleanor's resolve hardened. The echoes of the past had spoken now. It was time to act, to face the lantern wraith and the darkness that had claimed so many. Outside, a distant bell tolled, a sound swallowed quickly by the thickening fog. Eleanor closed her journal, the pages whispering like ghosts in the quiet room. Tomorrow, she would begin the fight for Hollow Street's soul. The evening air was heavy with a creeping chill as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Hollow Street into its familiar shroud of fog and lantern light. Eleanor Morland stood by the window, her gaze tracing the outlines of neighboring houses, each framed by the unyielding glow of their lanterns. The usual quiet was fractured by a sudden knock at the door, sharp and urgent. Martha Griggs stumbled inside, her frail frame shaking, eyes wide and wild. "They're gone, Eleanor," she gasped, clutching her shawl tighter as if it could shield her from the invisible menace. The Hendersons vanished as the lanterns lit up. I saw it, heard them calling, then nothing, just the fog swallowing them whole. Eleanor's heart pounded, the dread she had tried to suppress flooding through her veins. "Did you see where they went?" she asked, voice barely more than a whisper. Martha shook her head, tears brimming. "No, just gone." She sank into a chair, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "I barely escaped. I thought next would be me." Thomas appeared behind Eleanor, his youthful face pale but determined. "We need to barricade the doors," he urged, already moving to help. The flickering light from their own lantern wavered uncertainly, casting eerie shadows that danced against the wallpaper. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the fog itself was pressing against the windows, eager to claim another victim. Outside, the street was unnervingly silent, save for the distant drip of moisture from the gas lamps and the faint rustle of dead leaves. Eleanor's mind raced each vanished family, a stark reminder that the curse was tightening its grip. "We can't just wait," she said firmly. "We have to understand what's happening before it's too late." The doorbell rang unexpectedly, and Eleanor opened it to find Samuel Hargrove, the young reporter whose persistent inquiries had begun to unsettle the town. His sharp eyes reflected a mix of skepticism and concern. "Mrs. Morland," he said, not waiting for an invitation. "People are talking. The disappearances this curses, there any truth to it?" Eleanor hesitated, weighing the danger of revealing too much against the need for an ally. "There's more to this street than anyone admits," she replied cautiously. "And the lanterns, they hold us here." Samuel's gaze drifted to the dimming light of their lantern. "If what you say is true, then why do the lanterns never go out?" "Because they're cursed," Eleanor answered softly, "and we're prisoners to their light." As dusk deepened, the fog thickened, swallowing sound and light until the world beyond their home was reduced to a grey, whispering void. Suddenly, a faint cry echoed from down the street, panicked footsteps, fading into silence. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Another family had vanished. She closed the shutters, bolted the doors, and gathered Thomas and Martha close. "We're not safe," she murmured. "Not until we find a way to break this curse." Outside, Samuel lingered, his notebook forgotten in his hand as the weight of the night settled over Hollow Street. The lanterns glowed stubbornly, their cursed light a beacon and a prison. And Eleanor knew the battle for survival was only just beginning. The air inside Agnes Crowley's parlor was thick with the scent of aged paper and faint incense. Eleanor's footsteps echoed softly on the creaking floorboards as she crossed the threshold, the dim glow from a single oil lamp casting wavering shadows that danced like restless spirits on the walls. Agnes sat by the hearth, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes sharp and watchful beneath silver brows that arched like ancient arches of stone. The room was a museum of forgotten knowledge shelves, sagging beneath the weight of dusty tomes, curious talismans hanging from the ceiling beams, and faded drawings pinned to the walls that whispered secrets of the occult. Eleanor swallowed the knot of unease that had formed in her throat. "Mrs. Crowley," she began, voice tentative yet edged with urgency, "I need to know everything. About the curse, the lanterns, the wraithany thing." Agnes's gaze held a flicker of sorrow, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she reached beneath an ancient cabinet and withdrew a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and softened by time. She set it on the table with a hollow thud. "My family," she whispered, "we tried to break the curse once. A long time ago. It was a mistake." Eleanor leaned forward, her fingers twitching with anticipation. "What happened?" A bitter smile tugged at Agnes's lips. "We thought we could outwit the darkness. We performed a ritual, much like the one that imprisoned the wraith. We believed we could sever the bond between the lanterns and the curse. But we were wrong." She opened the journal, revealing pages filled with dense script, diagrams of flickering flames entwined with shadowy figures and cryptic symbols. Eleanor's eyes scanned the faded ink, each word a piece of a harrowing puzzle. The ritual had backfired, unleashing a surge of malevolent energy that claimed the life of Agnes's daughter, Lydia, who vanished into the fog, lost to the wraith's grasp. Agnes's voice cracked as she recounted the heartbreak, the weight of guilt pressing on her like a shroud. "The wraith," Agnes said, "is bound to the lantern's light. It feeds on the fear and despair trapped within the fog. But it is not invincible. There are ways to weaken it." Eleanor's heart pounded, the flickering flame of hope battling the shadows of dread. "What ways?" The old woman hesitated, then produced a small, worn talisman from her pakita, delicate charm etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the lamp's glow. "This," Agnes explained, "can repel the wraith's touch, but only briefly. To truly break the curse, one must extinguish the lantern's light itself. But beware, the cost is great." Thomas, who had been silent until now, shifted uneasily, his restless fingers tracing the edge of a nearby candle. "Mother," he murmured, voice barely audible, "what if the wraith comes for us?" Eleanor placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, her resolve hardening. "We won't let it take us, not without a fight." Outside, the fog pressed like a living entity against the window panes, its cold breath seeping into the room, a constant, chilling reminder of the peril lurking just beyond the fragile walls. Agnes's protective charm glowed faintly, casting ethereal patterns on the ceiling, a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. Eleanor's journal lay open on the table, its pages awaiting the next entry, a chronicle of fear, hope, and the desperate fight to reclaim Hollow Street from the endless night. The secrets revealed this night were a double-edged sword, offering both guidance and warning. As the candle's flame flickered, Eleanor knew the path forward was fraught with danger, but the stakes had never been higher. The curse's shadow loomed large, but so did the strength of a mother's love and a family's unyielding will to survive. The night outside deepened, swallowing the street in a thick veil of mist and silence. Within the flickering circle of light, Eleanor's eyes burned with determination. Tomorrow, the fight would begin, and the shadows would not wait. Hollow Street had never felt so suffocating. The fog, dense as a shroud, spilled over the cobblestones and crept beneath doorways, swallowing sound and light alike. It was as though the street itself had been swallowed by the breath of some great beast, silent and all-consuming. Eleanor Morland stood at the window of the parlor, her pale fingers pressed against the cold glass, eyes straining through the murk. The lanterns lining the street flickered weakly, their once steady glow now a desperate pulse in the thickening gloom. Neighbors moved hurriedly, their silhouettes blurred as they shuttered windows and barred doors before dusk could fully claim the day. The usual murmurs were gone, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed in like the fog itself. Behind Eleanor, the soft creak of floorboards announced Thomas's approach. Her son stood beside her, lean frame tense, tousled brown hair damp with the cold air seeping through the cracked window frame. His serious expression mirrored her own unease. "They're all shutting up early," he said quietly, voice barely audible above the muffled hush. "Even Martha closed her shutters an hour ago." Eleanor nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "The fog's worse tonight. It's like it's alive." Thomas glanced at the lantern hanging by the door, a dim, faltering light that refused to burn bright. He reached out, fingers brushing the cool glass as if willing it to glow steadier. "I'm going to try again tomorrow. Fix it." She gave a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I know you will." The room was cold, the hearth unlit. Eleanor turned away from the window and made her way to the small desk tucked in the corner, cluttered with scraps of paper, old books, and her ever-present journal. Lighting a candle, she sat down, the flickering flame casting long shadows that danced across the walls like restless phantoms. Her pen hovered over the page, trembling slightly as she began to write. The fog thickens, swallowing the street whole. The lantern's light falters again tonight. It's as if the darkness itself is creeping closer, pulling at the edges of our sanctuary. Jacob's absence is a weight that never lifts each night. I feel him slipping further away, swallowed by this endless night. But I will not let this curse claim us all, not if I can help it. Her hand tightened around the pen, the scratch of ink against paper, a fragile anchor against the rising tide of despair. The memories of Jacob's last night haunted her, his pale face as he stepped into the fog, the whispered promise to return that never came. Guilt clawed at her heart, a relentless spectre as real as the shadows lurking outside. A sudden creak from the hallway startled her. Thomas entered, eyes dark and restless. "Mum, are you sure about all this? About the curse?" Eleanor looked up, meeting his gaze. "I don't know what to believe sometimes, but I do know this. We have to be ready. Whatever's out there, it's getting stronger." Outside, the fog thickened, muffling the distant toll of a bell, a reminder of time slipping away. The world beyond their walls was becoming a place of whispers and vanished souls. Hours later, a soft knock echoed through the house. Eleanor's heart leaped as she moved cautiously to the door. Upon opening, she found Agnes Crowley standing shrouded in mist, her sharp eyes gleaming with unspoken knowledge. The old woman's frail frame was wrapped in layers of threadbare cloth, talismans hanging from her neck catching the dim light. "Eleanor," Agnes whispered, voice gravelly yet urgent. The fog is more than just weather tonight. It carries the weight of a curse older than any of us. We have little time. Eleanor stepped aside, letting Agnes enter. The chill of the night seemed to follow her in, thick with secrets and impending dread. Together, they sat by the faltering lantern light, Agnes unraveling cryptic warnings wrapped in riddles and half-truths. The old woman's words stirred something deep within Eleanor, a resolve that had been buried beneath layers of grief. Thomas listened silently, his youthful skepticism battered by the weight of evidence and fear. The fog outside seemed to press against the windows, as if eager to snatch them from their fragile haven. As the candle guttered low, Eleanor closed her journal and looked out once more. The street was a ghostly blur, lanterns flickering weakly beneath the heavy veil of fog. Tomorrow, she promised herself, they would fight back. For Jacob, for Thomas, for the hope that one day, the dawn might finally break over Hollow Street again. But for now, the night held its breath, endless and unyielding. The first whisper of movement in the fog beyond the window sent a shiver down Eleanor's spine. Somewhere in the swirling grey, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the light to fail completely, and Eleanor knew their time was running out. The lantern flickered once more, a faltering heartbeat in the choking dark, and then steadied a fragile promise in the endless night. The evening air hung heavy over Hollow Street, thick with the ever-present fog that swallowed sound and softened the glow of the lanterns to a ghostly haze. Eleanor Morland stood near the front window of their parlour, her sharp eyes straining into the swirling mist that pressed just beyond the glass. The faint outlines of shadowy forms flickered in and out of view, elusive yet undeniably there. She could feel their presence, a cold weight that settled in the marrow of her bones and whispered promises of despair. Thomas shifted uneasily at her side, his lean frame tense as he watched the wavering shapes. "Mother, are you sure this is safe?" His voice was low, edged with a restless fear that belied his usual composed demeanor. He had spent the day obsessing over the lantern, attempting to coax it back to a steady light. But now his energy had turned inward, his eyes darting nervously toward the thickening fog. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. She understood his fear. It gnawed at her as well, but she refused to let it rule her. "We have to be ready," she said quietly. "Agnes told me how to protect the house. We can hold them back, at least for now." The memory of Mrs. Agnes Crowley's cryptic visit earlier that day lingered in Eleanor's mind. The frail woman had shuffled into their home, clutching a small bundle of herbs and worn talismans. Her voice had been a mix of warning and encouragement, her eyes sharp beneath the silver strands pulled into a bun. "The phantoms are drawn to the failing light," Agnes had murmured, "but salt and chalk, words spoken with care, can keep them at bay for a time." Now, Eleanor knelt by the front door, her hands steady despite the cold that seeped into her fingers. She sprinkled a line of coarse salt across the threshold, the grains catching what little light the lantern provided. With a piece of white chalk, she traced intricate symbols along the doorframe, circles and crosses, shapes learned from Agnes's whispered instructions. As she worked, she whispered the incantations, her voice barely more than a breath, weaving ancient words into the stale air. Thomas watched her, a mix of skepticism and awe tightening his features. "Do you really believe this will work?" he asked, voice strained. Eleanor met his gaze, her dark eyes resolute. "We have no choice but to believe." The room seemed to hold its breath as the last symbol was drawn. Moments later, the temperature dropped sharply, and a faint, mournful whisper drifted beneath the door, slipping past the salt's barrier like a chilling caress. Thomas jumped, the first real sign that the unseen forces outside were aware of their defenses. "They're testing us," Eleanor said quietly, rising to her feet. She moved to the window again, hands clenched at her sides as she stared into the fog. The lantern's light flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the walls. For a moment, the phantoms seemed to press closer, their forms more distinct trait-like figures with hollow eyes, their faces contorted in silent screams. "Mother," Thomas's voice cracked, the veneer of calm breaking. "What if they break through?" Eleanor turned to him, her expression softening. "Then we fight, together." But even as she spoke the words, a gnawing doubt settled in her gut. The curse was growing stronger, feeding on their fear and the dimming light that once kept it at bay. The protection Agnes offered was tenuous, a fragile barrier against an ancient darkness that respected no boundary. That night, sleep eluded Eleanor. She sat by the window for hours, watching the lantern's flame, fragile and flickering, steady enough to hold back the fog's tendrils, but barely. The voices outside whispered incessantly, a symphony of sorrow and malice that clawed at her resolve. Thomas, restless and unable to sleep himself, paced the room, his youthful face shadowed with worry. "We can fix it," he insisted, his fingers itching to tinker with the lantern again. "It's just a light. We can make it burn bright." "It's more than a light," Eleanor said, voice heavy. "It's the prison and the prison guard. If it goes out, everything trapped here will be free." A sudden knock at the door jolted them both. Eleanor's heart slammed against her ribs as she moved cautiously to the entrance. No one was there, only the fog, thick and impenetrable, swirling around the doorstep like a living thing. As she closed the door, she caught a glimpse of a pale handprint fading on the glass, as if a desperate phantom had reached out for a way in. The night stretched on, a torment of shadows and whispered threats. Eleanor's protective circle held, but the cost was rising fear gnawing at her son, fracturing their trust. Thomas's restlessness grew into defiance, his young mind balking at the suffocating dread that gripped them. "You don't trust me," he accused one evening, voice sharp and raw. "You think I'll just run away like father did." The words struck Eleanor like a blow. She wanted to reassure him, to bridge the growing distance, but the weight of her own guilt and fear tangled her tongue. "I'm trying to keep us safe," she said finally, voice trembling. "I need you to believe that." But belief was a fragile thing on Hollow Street, where light and shadow waged a constant war, and the phantoms at the door waited patiently for a crack to slip inside. As the chapter closed, Eleanor stood once more by the window, the lantern's glow flickering precariously as ghostly figures drifted just beyond the glass. The battle to hold back the curse was only beginning, and the night was long and unyielding.